I arrived at the Whitmore estate just before noon on Thanksgiving Day. The drive from Chicago had taken longer than expected. Freeway traffic, icy roads, the usual November chaos. But I didn't mind. I was excited. This was supposed to be my first real Thanksgiving with Nathan's family since we got married. I'd packed gifts, fresh ingredients for a rosemary glazed turkey, and even a pumpkin cheesecake Nathan had raved about last fall. The house loomed ahead, 3 stories of colonial grandeur tucked behind a wrought iron gate in the sleepy hills of upstate New York. Nathan had grown up here. He'd described it like a Norman Rockwell painting. Fireplace crackling, football on TV, his mom Carla in a festive apron, the scent of roasted sage in every room. I imagined walking into a warm kitchen, hearing laughter, clinking dishes, and Gerald, Nathan's father, smiling from his favorite armchair, glass of bourbon in hand. But when I pushed the front door open, I was met with silence, no turkey aroma, no voices, no heat. The air was cold and still. I called out, "Nathan? Carla? Gerald?" Nothing. The only sound was the dull creak of a rocking chair coming from the sitting room. Heart pounding, I followed it, wheeling my suitcase behind me. That's when I saw him, Gerald Whitmore, alone in the dim light, wrapped in a faded blanket, slowly rocking back and forth. He didn't look surprised to see me. He opened one eye and said in a low, gravelly voice, "Took you long enough." I blinked. "Where is everyone?" Gerald tilted his head toward the side table. A white envelope lay there with my name written in Nathan's quick, confident scrawl. I picked it up, tore it open, and read, "Gone on a wellness cruise with Sophie. Mom came too. She needed a break. You'll stay with Dad. He needs you. Back Monday. Nathan." My fingers trembled. Sophie? His ex-girlfriend Sophie? The same one from his firm who texted him late at night about client emergencies? My mouth went dry. Gerald's voice cut through the fog. "Shall we begin?" I turned to him, stunned. I don't understand. You knew about this?" "I suspected," he said, shifting in the chair with a grunt. "Nathan always did hate holidays, and commitment." I reread the note twice, then dropped it on the counter as my hand went numb. "He's not coming back until Monday, is he?" Gerald didn't answer directly. "They left Tuesday morning, didn't even bother to stock the fridge. I've been eating canned soup for 3 days." I stared at him. "But we were supposed to have Thanksgiving together. Carla was hosting. Nathan told me to bring dessert and gifts. I took time off work. I thought." "You thought wrong," Gerald said, his voice flat. "Classic Whitmore move. Leave someone else to clean up the mess." I sank into a kitchen chair, numb. "I don't understand. Sophie? Seriously?" Gerald nodded slowly. "She's been calling here for months. Pretty voice, terrible laugh." I reached for my phone and opened Instagram, hands shaking. A fresh notification glowed at the top of my screen. Nathan tagged in a post. I tapped it. There they were. Nathan and Sophie, arms around each other on a cruise ship deck, holding champagne flutes. Carla posed in the background, laughing in oversized sunglasses. The caption read, "Hat Wellness Week Caribbean Recharge with @Sophie Hart and Family." Family. The word hit me like a punch to the chest. I scrolled through more images. There was Nathan at a pool bar, Carla getting a massage, Sophie and Nathan clinking wine glasses at what looked like a romantic rooftop dinner. The post was dated 2 days ago, before I even finished baking the cheesecake. "They left me," I said aloud. "They actually left me." Gerald sighed and shuffled toward the fridge. "Hope you brought groceries." I shook my head. "Just pie ingredients. And cranberries. Stuff for a dinner I thought I'd be sharing with family." My phone pinged again. A text from my best friend Maya. "Happy Thanksgiving, Sienna. Hope Nathan's family treats you like royalty." I silenced it, unable to respond. Gerald filled a glass with tap water, his hands shaking. "Well, it ain't much, but I've got some split-pea soup left over from yesterday." I stood, something in me snapping. No, we're not doing this. We're not eating soup from a can on Thanksgiving. You deserve better." We both do. Gerald looked at me curiously. What are you proposing? I'm going to the store, I said, grabbing my coat. There's still time. I'll get turkey breast, potatoes, something warm and proper. His eyes lit up for a second. Haven't had a home-cooked meal in months. Nathan usually just drops off fast food. I nodded. Not today. Outside, snow had begun to fall lightly, covering the cold stone driveway in soft white. As I backed out, the mansion behind me stood still and silent, like a stage before the curtain rises. What I didn't know then was that over the next 4 days, Gerald and I would rewrite the script they had handed us, and when the family returned, they'd find a performance waiting that none of them would ever forget. By the time I returned from the grocery store, the late afternoon sun had dipped below the trees, casting the Whitmore property in a pale, moody twilight. I stepped inside with 2 bags of groceries, turkey breast, potatoes, green beans, and a bottle of cider, and found Gerald still sitting in the kitchen, a legal pad open in front of him, half filled with messy, angular handwriting. I thought you might have changed your mind, he said without looking up. I don't walk out on people, I replied, a little sharper than I meant to, even when they clearly deserve it. His eyes flicked up. So, you're staying? I set the groceries down. For now. Gerald's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer than felt comfortable. Then he nodded once, slow and deliberate. Good. I started unpacking the food, trying not to think about the Instagram photos still burning in the back of my mind. As I reached into the fridge to rearrange space, my fingers brushed against a takeout container that looked old, like it had been there for weeks. The shelves were nearly empty. No milk, no eggs, no fresh produce. Just condiments, a half-used stick of butter, and a bottle of expired orange juice. You weren't kidding about the fridge, I muttered. Nope, Gerald grunted. They said they were cutting back. Conserving energy and resources. My breath caught. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app Nathan and I shared. We'd been saving for months, $23,000 for IVF, after 2 years of failed natural tries. I remembered every sacrifice, skipping vacations, selling my car, even taking on extra freelance work. Current balance, $86.23. Recent activity, $18,000 due withdrawal. 3 days ago. Description, Hartwell Luxury Cruises. My blood ran cold. He took it, all of it, for her, for their cruise, for their new life without me. I turned the screen toward Gerald. He drained our savings. That money was for our IVF treatment. Gerald didn't even flinch. Sounds about right. That's it? I asked, voice rising. That's all you have to say? He let out a slow breath and tapped the side of his head. When your eyes still work, but people think your brain doesn't, you learn a lot. I've seen it coming. I stared at him. Then why didn't you say anything? Because no one would have listened. They never do. Carla says I'm forgetful. Nathan calls me paranoid. But I'm neither. He reached for the legal pad and tore off the top page, sliding it toward me. Bank statements, notes, names, dates. Documented patterns of financial extraction. He'd been keeping track. Carla's been rerouting my medication shipments for months, he said. Says she forgets, that Medicare delays things. But I've checked. I've made calls when I can. I pay for overnight shipping. And yet, delays. My head spun. That's neglect. Gerald's mouth curled into something halfway between a smirk and a grimace. That's a family legacy. I took a seat across from him. Why are you showing me this? Because you're the only one who came back, he said plainly. Because I don't think I have much time. And because I believe you might be the only person left who gives a damn. His words silenced me. Then he dropped the final blow. I'm dying, Sienna, he said, voice flat. Stage 4 liver cancer. 3 months, maybe less. I felt the floor drop beneath me. What? He gestured toward a manila folder tucked under the legal pad. I opened it. Scan results. Blood work. Oncologist reports. All recent. All real. I flipped to a page marked prognosis. My heart twisted. You knew you were dying, And they just left you? Oh, they know. Carla was in the room when the doctor gave me the diagnosis. She cried for about 5 minutes. Then she asked if we could still make the family cruise. Tears stung my eyes. Gerald sat back, watching me with unnerving calm. They think they've left me here to die quietly. But they've actually given me the best opportunity I've had in years. What opportunity? He leaned forward. For justice. The word rang through the room like a bell. I've got assets they don't know about, he continued. Trusts, property, investments from my days in investment banking. Carla's been siphoning the surface accounts, sure, but I planned for that. Always had a backup plan. Okay. I want to change my will, make everything official, leave it to you. I blinked. Me? Yes. But there's more. I want them exposed. Their neglect, their abuse. I want their masks to fall off in public. I want every greedy smile wiped clean. I stared at him, stunned. You want revenge. I want accountability. I sat back, heart racing. You said earlier. Shall we begin? I said. Is this what you meant? A flicker of something, pride, satisfaction, lit in his eyes. He nodded. They abandoned both of us, but they think they left us with a burden. What they really left behind was a reckoning. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then I took a deep breath. All right, I said softly. Let's begin. The next morning, we began. Gerald was already up when I came downstairs, seated at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of black coffee and a stack of printed emails. His movements were slower than the day before. He didn't say it aloud, but I could see the pain behind his eyes, the fatigue, the quiet flinches. No performance was needed today. His illness was real. We were just amplifying what his family refused to see. Didn't sleep? I asked. Didn't try, he muttered. Too much to do. I made him oatmeal and toast, gently coaxing him to eat before we started. We need visuals, I said, as he finished the last bite. Photos, videos, something that shows how bad it's gotten. Gerald nodded. There's a box in the guest room closet. Old medical props. Carla once dabbled in hospice volunteering before she got too busy. Probably still in there. I found it easily. Oxygen tubing, an old IV stand, even a couple of hospital-grade monitors. Most of it was non-functional, but it looked convincing enough for photos. I dusted off what I could and began rearranging Gerald's bedroom with his help. It was surprisingly effective, clinical, stark, and deeply unsettling. We worked in silence for a while, then Gerald broke it with a grunt. Need makeup. Shadows. Highlight the bones in my face. You ever do theater? College. Stage makeup class, I said, grabbing my concealer and a gray eyeliner pencil. Under the harsh overhead light, I drew faint lines beneath his cheekbones, darkened the hollows around his eyes, and added just a touch of powder to dull his already pale complexion. When I was done, he looked fragile, defeated, like a man slipping away. I snapped several photos, him in bed, connected to the oxygen, hand gripping the side rail, eyes half-lidded. Perfect, he said when I showed him the shots. Now you, me? You need to look exhausted, broken, like this has been taking a toll on you too. He wasn't wrong. I threw on an old hoodie, removed my makeup, and tousled my hair. Gerald took a few photos, me slumped in a chair next to his bed, holding a thermometer, pretending to check his pulse, staring into space like someone on the edge. I drafted a message to Nathan's sister, Rachel, who had texted 2 days ago asking how Dad's spirits were. Gerald had a rough night. Fever spiked. He's resting now, but the hospice nurse is concerned. We'll keep you updated. I sent the message along with one of the more dramatic photos, Gerald appearing near comatose, his hand in mine. The reply came within minutes. Oh no, poor Dad. Let me know if you need anything. I'll tell Nathan and Mom once they get back from the snorkeling tour. Gerald chuckled dryly when I read it aloud. Hook set. Next came the voicemails. We knew Nathan wouldn't answer if I called, but we needed the digital trail. Gerald pulled out his old flip phone, pressed record, and gestured for me to start. "Nathan, it's me again," I said, my voice trembling on cue. "Gerald's not doing well. He's barely eating. I think we're down to days, maybe less. Can you please call me back?" I hung up, heart pounding harder than it should have. "You're a natural," Gerald said. "It's not acting," I replied. Between calls, I compiled the photos, created a running medical log with fictional but plausible entries, fever charts, pain episodes, sleeping difficulties. I even backdated some entries to make the decline seem consistent, stretching back to before they left. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. I stiffened. Gerald didn't react. "Expecting someone?" I asked. "No, but maybe it's an opportunity." I opened the door to find a gray-haired woman holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. She smiled warmly. "I'm Helen Delaney, next door. I saw your car and thought you might appreciate a hot meal. Taking care of Gerald is no small task." Touched, I invited her in. The casserole was spinach lasagna, homemade, still warm. As she sat at the kitchen table, Helen's tone shifted. "I've lived next to the Whitmores for 15 years, she said, her voice softening. "That boy of yours, Nathan, he used to mow my lawn for $5. Sweet kid once. Not so sweet lately." "What do you mean?" I asked gently. "Last month, Gerald fell in the front yard, right in the driveway. I saw it from my window and rushed over. Nathan was inside, watching football. Didn't even come out when I knocked." My heart clenched. "He didn't help?" "Didn't move a muscle," she said, her voice brittle. Gerald tried to laugh it off when I brought it up, but you could see it embarrassed him. I nodded, feeling the ache in my chest deepen. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "It means more than you know." Before she left, Helen promised to check in again and told me she'd spread the word to other neighbors about Gerald's condition. She wasn't doing it for gossip. She was doing it because she cared. That night, Gerald and I reviewed everything: messages, photos, statements. "We're building something they can't ignore," I said. Gerald raised an eyebrow. "No, Sienna. We're building something they can't survive." After Helen left and the house settled into its usual silence, Gerald asked me to follow him into the study. I hesitated. He'd barely eaten that evening, and his breath had grown more labored over the past few hours. Still, he insisted, leaning heavily on his cane, pale but determined. "If I don't do this now," he said, "I might not get another chance." The study was a narrow room that Carla had once called her meditation retreat, though it felt more like a forgotten office. Gerald gestured to a framed painting of a farmhouse. "Help me take that down." Together, we lifted it off the wall, revealing a cutout square in the paneling. Behind it, a loose board. He pried it off with a flathead screwdriver he'd hidden in a desk drawer. Inside the cavity was a waterproof document case, thick with papers and bound files. Gerald carried it to the desk and began laying everything out in careful order. I expected dusty property records or outdated insurance policies. What I saw instead made my breath catch. Account ledgers, offshore banking details, investment portfolios, and then a single sheet labeled Total Net Holdings, Private. $4.7 million. My head snapped up. You're a millionaire?" He almost laughed. "Was. Still am, technically. Most of it's offshore, from my investment firm days. Carla always thought I retired broke because I let her manage the family money. Meanwhile, I managed the real money. And she never knew? She thought I was a sentimental idiot. I let her." He showed me deeds to 2 properties, one in Vermont, the other a lakeside cabin in Minnesota, both owned under anonymous LLCs. "And this house?" I asked. He smiled, thin and deliberate. "Held by one of my holding companies. Carla thinks her name is on the title. It's not. Hasn't been for 10 years. I stood there in stunned silence. He tapped the desk. "They think I'm helpless, that I'm just waiting to die. They don't realize I've been building an escape hatch all this time." Gerald leaned back, exhausted but proud. "But I can't take it with me, and I don't want Carla or Nathan to get a penny. They had their chance. They used me." I met his eyes. "You're serious about leaving everything to me?" I've already made the change with my attorney. But the will is just the beginning. There will be challenges. Carla will contest everything, which is why we need more than truth. We need evidence. He turned to a small leather-bound journal and handed it to me. Start here. Inside were handwritten notes, dates, times, and events. Moments of neglect, theft, and manipulation. Missed doctor's appointments, withheld medications, suspicious transfers from his known accounts. I flipped through pages, each one more detailed than the last. He even noted conversations he'd overheard. Comments like, I can't wait until he's gone, we need that money, and just cut his pills in half, he won't know the difference. My stomach twisted. You kept all this? I whispered. Every word. My body's failing, but my mind? Still sharp. I sat down heavily across from him. I don't know what to say. Say you'll finish this with me. Say you'll help me burn it all down. Legally, properly, publicly. I stared at the man who, 4 days ago, had been a stranger, and now? Now he was trusting me with the truth, with his legacy, and with the one thing his family never gave him: dignity. Yes, I said quietly. I'll help. He nodded once, then pressed a button on his desk phone. Patricia, it's time. Bring the real paperwork. Patricia Lawson arrived the next morning, exactly at 9 a.m., with a small briefcase, tight silver bun, and a no-nonsense stride. She looked every inch the high-powered estate attorney. So you're the abandoned daughter-in-law, she said when I greeted her at the door. Victor spoke highly of you, said you have fire. I led her to the study where Gerald was waiting in a wool cardigan, visibly thinner than even the day before, but still alert. They hugged briefly, two old friends, battle-worn and ready for war. Over coffee, Patricia reviewed the changes Gerald had requested to his will and trust. These documents establish a financial firewall, she explained. You'll be the sole trustee, with powers to allocate to charitable causes as discussed. Elder abuse prevention organizations will receive significant donations. And most importantly, Carla and Nathan are completely cut out. Won't they contest it? I asked. They'll try. But I've documented everything. Gerald has been declared mentally competent by 2 independent physicians. We'll have notarized affidavits and video testimony. They can scream all they want. There won't be a crack to crawl through. I sat back, absorbing it all. Patricia smiled. And don't worry, I've been at this a long time. There's nothing more dangerous than a dying man with a plan. That evening, Gerald and I sat by the fireplace, flipping through an old photo album he'd pulled from a shelf. This is Nathan, he said, pointing to a photo of a sullen teen. And Carla, whispering in his ear, always whispering. He turned the page. And that's Nathan's father, David. Miserable by the time the divorce came through, Carla squeezed him dry. As I watched him trace the faded edges of the pictures, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was a man's final stand, his refusal to be erased, and I'd been chosen to help carry it through. You know, Gerald said quietly, I thought I'd die invisible, but thanks to you maybe I won't. I looked up at him. No, Gerald, they'll remember you, and not for the reasons they think. The next morning dawned gray and brittle, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. I found Gerald already awake, bundled in a thick blanket on the living room sofa, his skin paler than yesterday. You don't have to pretend, I said softly, placing a cup of tea beside him. I can tell today's harder. He didn't argue. I won't last long, Sienna. We both know it. I swallowed. Then we don't waste a minute. We spent the morning preparing what would become the most powerful weapon in our plan, Gerald's recorded testimony. Patricia had brought a high-quality camera the night before, along with a tripod and lighting kit. She'd also included a statement outline with the recommendation, speak clearly, with dates, and without emotional exaggeration. Facts always land harder than feelings. I set up the equipment in the study and dimmed the background lighting. Gerald insisted on wearing a navy blazer, the same one he wore to his last board meeting 15 years ago. Might as well look like a man they'd believe. he said with a half-smile. When I hit record, the air changed. "Today is November 26th, Gerald began, voice steady. "My name is Gerald Whitmore. I am of sound mind, diagnosed with terminal liver cancer, and I am recording this testimony to document a pattern of neglect, manipulation, and financial exploitation by my family." He spoke for 21 minutes straight, methodical, calm, devastating. He named dates and incidents, appointments canceled by Carla, medication bottles that returned half full, money siphoned under the guise of home care expenses. He recalled overhearing Nathan joke to Sophie on the phone. "Dad's got one foot in the grave. Might as well hurry him along." He paused only once, to sip water and compose himself. Then came the final blow. "In these last days," Gerald said, "the only person who has shown me dignity, who has honored my humanity, is my daughter-in-law, Sienna. She has done what my own blood refused to do: stay, witness, care." He looked into the lens, eyes sharp as ever. "She will inherit everything because she has earned it, and because those who abandon me will walk away with nothing. Not out of cruelty, but out of justice." When the video ended, I sat in silence. The only sound was the soft whirring of the ceiling fan. "You did it," I whispered. "You said everything they need to hear." "They won't believe it," Gerald said. "Not until they see it all. Then we show them everything." Over the next 2 days, we gathered what we could. Patricia called in a discreet notary and 2 medical witnesses to sign and certify Gerald's mental clarity. Each of them spent time with him, asked him detailed questions, and walked away with full confidence in his competence. I organized the evidence with the precision of an archivist, labeling folders, time-stamping voicemails, sorting social media screenshots, and placing physical documents into color-coded binders. Then came the visitors. Word had spread among the neighbors after Helen Delaney's casserole visit. On Friday, Mr. and Mrs. Langford from 2 doors down came by with baked goods and a story about seeing Gerald alone at the pharmacy last month, struggling to pick up a prescription after Carla had forgotten to renew it. The next day, a retired nurse named Barbara stopped by. "I used to run into Carla at the co-op," she said, always bragging about their upcoming inheritance. I remember thinking, shouldn't she be more focused on Gerald's health? Each visitor gave us more than comfort. They gave us witness testimony. Patricia documented each account and had them sign simple affidavits of what they'd seen or heard. By Sunday morning, we had 6 eyewitness statements, 2 physician declarations, a full financial audit, and Gerald's own recorded statement. The house felt transformed, from a tomb of silence into a fortress of truth. But time was running out. That afternoon, Gerald had one final request. "The port wine," he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Back of the study, behind the old economics textbooks. I was saving it for our 50th wedding anniversary." I found the bottle exactly where he said it would be, thick with dust, unopened for decades. I poured 2 small glasses and brought them to the living room. "To what?" I asked, handing him his glass. "To clarity," Gerald whispered, raising his. We clinked glasses. The wine was sweet, aged, bittersweet, like the moment itself. Later, I helped him into bed. His breathing had grown ragged, and though he hadn't complained, I could see the pain etched into every muscle. "Do you regret anything?" I asked quietly as I adjusted his pillows. "Only that I waited so long to stop pretending they loved me." He reached for my hand. "You know," he said, voice barely audible, "you've been the only light in a very long tunnel. I thought I'd die resented, alone. But now, I get to leave with my head high." Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. "I'll finish this, Gerald," I promised. "I'll make sure they see it all." His smile was faint. "That's my girl." Gerald passed quietly just before sunrise on Monday. There was no gasp, no final words, just a deep exhale as the gray morning light crept through the curtains, and his chest never rose again. His hand was still resting in mine. I'd been reading to him from his favorite book, The Old Man and the Sea, my voice soft in the silence of the house. When I realized, I didn't move for several minutes. I just sat there, holding his hand, tears slipping soundlessly down my cheeks. We had only known each other for 5 days, but somehow, I felt like I had known Gerald my whole life. Or maybe it was because, in those 5 days, I'd seen more truth, more courage, more vulnerability than I had in 6 years of marriage. When I finally stood, I kissed the back of his hand and whispered, "You did it. You left on your terms." Then I called Diane, the hospice nurse. She arrived within the hour, calm and respectful. After examining Gerald's body and confirming what I already knew, she took me aside. "He looks at peace," she said gently. "Very few people pass without discomfort. He must have felt safe." "I hope he did," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I'll notify the coroner and handle the documentation. Do you want me to call the family?" I shook my head. "They chose not to be here." Diane nodded. She didn't ask questions, just placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did right by him. That matters." The funeral was held that afternoon. It was simple, tasteful, and warm. The chapel was small, barely 20 people, but every seat was filled with neighbors, community volunteers, and even 2 retired bankers who had once served with Gerald on the local credit union board. Patricia was there, seated in the front row in a charcoal gray suit, her expression unreadable. Beside her sat Helen Delaney, eyes wet, clutching a handkerchief embroidered with violets. I stood at the podium to speak. "I didn't know Gerald very long," I began, my voice steady. "But I came to learn something very quickly. He was the kind of man people underestimated, until he proved them wrong. Again and again." I spoke of his wit, his sharp mind, his fierce sense of justice. I spoke of the stories he shared in the evenings, his dreams, his regrets, and the kind of legacy he wanted to leave. And I ended with this. He said to me once that the greatest pain in life isn't death. It's being seen as a burden by those you love. So today, I want to say this for everyone to hear. Gerald Whitmore was never a burden. He was a man of strength, humor, and dignity. And I am proud to have known him, even for a short while. There was silence, then a soft ripple of applause. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Gerald would have liked that. Back at the house, the real work began. They were coming back that evening, Carla, Nathan, and Rachel, still expecting to find Gerald clinging to life, weak and waiting. They'd probably planned to swoop in for the final moments, pose as loving family members, and post a tasteful grief selfie by the hospital bed before claiming whatever they thought they were owed. But now, they were walking into a carefully constructed truth trap. I spent the afternoon transforming the house into a gallery of consequences. In the living room, I placed a cream-colored envelope on the mantel, Gerald's letter, sealed and addressed to my family. Beside it, I propped the family photo I'd found on the hallway table. It was from 2 Thanksgivings ago. Carla and Nathan smiled broadly, Rachel raising a wine glass. Gerald stood in the back, half out of frame. In the dining room, I laid out the folders. Labeled clearly: neglect records, financial exploitation, witness statements, video testimony, revoked medical authorizations, each one a chapter in the story they had tried to ignore. Each one filled with damning facts. On the television, I queued up Gerald's recorded testimony, ready to play with the push of a button. And in the bedroom, I placed a printed timeline of the cruise, photos they had posted, receipts they had shared, even captions where they'd used hashtags like #recharge, #familytime, #deserved break. I printed them in glossy color and taped them to the mirror over the vanity where Carla liked to do her makeup. The same mirror she'd probably look into after dropping her luggage. Before the sun dipped too low, I took one last walk through the house, checking every detail. I wore black, not for mourning, but as armor, sleek, simple, unshakable. Gerald's rocking chair remained where I had first found him, now still and empty, facing the front door. I stood behind it, waiting. And when I finally heard the sound of tires crunching up the gravel drive, followed by slamming doors and casual laughter. I didn't flinch. Let them come. Let them walk in. Let them see everything they threw away. The front door burst open at exactly 6:12 p.m. I stood silently in the living room, arms folded, as their voices filled the grand foyer with laughter and oblivious cheer. "Oh my God, I need a real shower," Carla Whitmore announced, dragging a Louis Vuitton weekender behind her. That spa on the ship was overrated. Rachel trailed behind, face flushed from the sun. "Mom, did you see my post from the beach? The one with the mango smoothie?" Then Nathan stepped through the door, tan and smiling, sunglasses still pushed up into his hair. "Sienna?" he called out casually. "Why is it so dark in here?" Their laughter stopped the moment they saw me. I stood beside Gerald's empty rocking chair, dressed in black, eyes steady. Nathan's smile faltered. "What's with the—" He gestured vaguely at my outfit. "Funeral look?" Carla narrowed her eyes. "Where's Gerald? Is he asleep already?" I didn't move. "Gerald passed away Saturday night," I said evenly. The silence that followed was absolute. Carla's designer bag slipped from her shoulder and hit the hardwood floor. Rachel covered her mouth. What do you mean he passed?" Nathan asked, stepping forward. "We talked about this. He wasn't supposed to go yet. No one's supposed to go," I replied coldly. "But it happens. He died peacefully, quietly, with dignity, and without any of you." Rachel blinked, her voice shaking. You didn't call us?" "I did," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Multiple times. Left messages, sent texts. You were busy tagging each other in beach photos." I tossed the phone onto the console table. "The last one was Friday night. You ignored that too." Carla's face twisted. "We had non-refundable tickets. We didn't think he'd actually die?" I finished for her. "That's the part you were gambling with?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again. "Where is he now?" Nathan asked quietly. "Buried," I said. "Funeral was yesterday afternoon." "You held the funeral without us?" Carla hissed, stepping closer. "You had no right." "He asked me to," I replied calmly, "because he knew you wouldn't come in time, or care." Rachel took a small step back, guilt creeping into her expression. Nathan's jaw clenched. Carla scoffed. "This is ridiculous. Gerald wouldn't—" He was confused. His medication. "He was lucid," I said sharply, cutting her off. "And he left you a letter. All of you." I picked up the cream-colored envelope from the mantel and handed it to Nathan. He asked that it be read aloud. Reluctantly, Nathan broke the seal and unfolded the letter. His voice was shaky at first, then hollow, then furious. "To my family, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Not that my absence ever made much difference to you in recent years. You treated me as a burden, an afterthought, a dying inconvenience. That truth is heavier than any illness I've endured. You left me with someone you expected to fail. Instead, she gave me dignity. She stayed, she saw me, and she'll carry forward everything you thought would be yours. I wish I could say I forgive you, but I don't. I only hope you learn from this, before you treat someone else the way you treated me." By the end, Rachel was crying. Carla stood like stone. Nathan tossed the letter on the floor. "This is a manipulation." He wasn't well. He probably didn't even understand what he was signing. "He understood perfectly," came a cool voice from the hallway. All three turned to see Patricia Lawson step into view, holding a leather briefcase, accompanied by Thomas, the notary. Carla's face darkened. "Oh, perfect. The shark." Patricia smiled politely. "How lovely to see you again, Carla. I'm here as the executor of Gerald's estate." "Let me guess," Nathan snapped. "You let him rewrite everything behind our backs?" "Not behind," Patricia said. "He recorded a statement, with witnesses, with mental competency certifications, with timestamp documentation." I moved toward the TV, picked up the remote, and said, "Why don't we let Gerald explain?" Then I pressed play. The room went silent as Gerald's face filled the screen. He looked old, tired, but clear, grounded, unshakable. They watched in growing horror as he calmly described their neglect, their manipulation, and how they made him feel invisible in the final chapter of his life. He recited specific dates, financial records, even transcribed conversations he had overheard. Rachel sat down halfway through. Carla's arms were folded so tightly her knuckles turned white. Nathan didn't blink. He just stared, breathing heavily, jaw twitching. When the screen faded to black, Patricia stepped forward again. As of this moment, all of Gerald's assets, his properties, his trust, and the entirety of his private holdings are under the legal control of Sienna Whitmore. You have been disinherited. Carla laughed bitterly. That won't hold up. We'll contest. Nathan is his son. He has rights. Actually, Patricia said smoothly, opening her briefcase, you'll find that the trust Gerald established years ago removed you all from legal entitlement. And since the accounts you were siphoning funds from were not his only holdings, the law is not in your favor. Nathan stepped forward, voice low. You think this makes you powerful, Sienna? You manipulated a dying man. No, I said, stepping closer. I honored him, something none of you ever bothered to do. Then I placed two final items on the coffee table. A printed spreadsheet of every transaction Nathan made, including the money siphoned from our IVF savings. A full copy of Gerald's will, with notarized pages, public witnesses, and the clause that cited elder abuse and abandonment as cause for removal. Nathan's face drained of color. Rachel stared at the spreadsheet, eyes wide. You spent our college fund? He didn't answer. Carla's mouth opened and then closed. For the first time, she looked unsure. I'll be leaving in the morning, I said, lifting my chin. This house? It's not yours. It belongs to the Whitmore Legacy Trust. And I'm the trustee. Get out, Nathan whispered. No, I said with finality. You get out. I retrieved my suitcase from the upstairs bedroom in silence. The family downstairs had splintered into chaos, Rachel sobbing, Carla shouting accusations, Nathan pacing like a trapped animal. But I didn't listen anymore. I didn't need to. Their downfall had already written itself. The echo of Gerald's voice from the video still hung in the house like smoke. She saw me. She stayed. She will carry forward everything you thought would be yours. I zipped my bag and placed two items on the nightstand. My wedding ring, shining coldly in the morning light. The keys to the apartment Nathan and I once shared. Letting go never felt so easy. As I came down the stairs, Nathan stepped into the hallway, blocking the door. Sienna, wait. I looked up at him, the man I once loved, or thought I did. His face was pale now, the tan from the cruise making his desperation look absurd. We can fix this, he said, voice shaking. I messed up, okay? I made a mistake. Sophie meant nothing. I raised an eyebrow. You left me a note to take care of your dying father while you went on vacation with your ex. You drained our savings. You didn't call once. He swallowed hard. It was complicated. I was stressed. No, Nathan, I said calmly. It was easy. You just didn't care. He took a step forward. I'll go to court. I'll fight this. You won't win. I already have, I said, voice like stone. Then I pressed a printed photograph into his chest, one of many I had laid out across the house. It was him and Sophie, poolside, champagne flutes raised. The date stamp was the same day I had sent a voicemail saying Gerald's fever had spiked. You left him to die, I said quietly. Now you get nothing, including me. I stepped around him. Don't walk away from me, he shouted behind me. I paused at the door. Funny, I said, turning slightly. That's exactly what you did. Outside, the air was brisk, crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and cold earth. The sun had just risen over the treetops, casting golden light over the gravel drive. I placed my suitcase in the trunk of my car. From across the street, Helen Delaney stood on her porch in a bathrobe, holding a cup of tea. She raised her hand in a small, solemn wave. I returned it with a nod, a silent thank you for everything. Before I climbed into the car, I looked back at the house. It no longer looked like a fortress of betrayal. It looked like a tomb of broken illusions, a place where truth had finally been exhumed. In the window, I saw Carla pacing, phone to her ear, probably calling lawyers. Rachel was seated on the couch, crying. Nathan stood still, holding the photo I had given him like it might burn him. Let them unravel. Let them drown in the silence they once forced on Gerald. Patricia had arranged a quiet hotel for me 2 towns over, a place with warm lighting, thick quilts, and no questions asked. I arrived just after noon, checked in, and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. I should have felt victorious, but instead, what I felt was lighter, not triumphant, not cruel, just free. That night, I sat on the hotel balcony wrapped in a soft blanket, a glass of wine in hand. I opened Gerald's leather journal, the one he used to document everything, and read through the final pages. The last entry was scrawled in shakier handwriting than the rest. If you're reading this, it means the plan worked. Thank you, Sienna. You gave me back my voice. Use what I've given you to build something that matters. And don't look back. They'll never change, but you already have. I pressed the journal to my chest, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. He was right. Weeks passed. The legal filings held firm. Gerald's trust was validated in probate court without contest, thanks to airtight documentation, medical records, and video evidence. Nathan tried to challenge the will, but withdrew after Patricia delivered a 100-page affidavit of financial misconduct. Carla retreated to Florida to live with a cousin she hadn't spoken to in 20 years. Rachel sent me a letter, handwritten, apologizing. She never got a reply. I donated $750,000 of Gerald's estate to an elder care abuse prevention charity, one he once said he admired. The rest, I used to start over. A small architecture studio in Vermont. Cozy, modern, mine. Sometimes I still hear Gerald's voice when I work late into the night, telling a story, complaining about decaf, or saying those words that started everything. Shall we begin? And now, every time I open a new project or meet a new client, I whisper the same thing under my breath, like a prayer and a promise. Let's begin.